Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to be talking about a weird article from the Wall Street Journal that I saw, and this is pretty much accusing some pretty insane stuff, and not only do I not understand, I guess, how this is even possible, but I also am not really getting how this is even a feasible concept in terms of like how this is so widespread apparently. So this article is claiming that people, especially all over the United States, primarily like teenagers and girls, have been showing up to doctors' offices with things called ticks. If you don't know what ticks are, I'm not talking about like the little bugs or whatever that are in tall grass, but ticks is in like Tourettes. So if you don't know what ticks are, basically it's like a side effect of, especially like I said, Tourettes. And it basically makes people like do weird jerking movements, and they'll have moments where they kind of like yell, or they'll say things that are like not acceptable. For instance, I've seen videos of people with Tourettes who they'll be in public and they yell things like fuck or something like that, right? Obviously, this would be a very hard condition to live with. I mean, especially if, let's say you're at the grocery store and you're just yelling some wild shit because you're having another tic and you can't really control it. People really aren't gonna know the difference unless you tell them, right? So they might just think you're some lunatic screaming in the bread aisle about goddamn this and motherfuck that or whatever, right? So it's a pretty hard condition for a lot of people to live with, and especially with some of the more like violent, I guess, muscle movements that it can cause. It could probably actually end up pulling muscles or causing harm/damage to people. So apparently though, people, especially girls who are watching TikTok, are showing up even more rapidly than before with symptoms of Tourette's and these ongoing tics and things like that, right? And it's a phenomena that is puzzling doctors, to say the least. And not only is it puzzling them, but it's also confusing me. So movement disorder doctors were stumped at first. Girls with tics are rare, and these teens had an unusually high number of them, which had developed suddenly. After months of studying the patients and consulting with one another, experts at top pediatric hospitals in the US, Canada, Australia, and the UK discovered that most of the girls had something in common: TikTok. According to a spate of recent medical journal articles, doctors say the girls had been watching videos of TikTok influencers who said they had Tourette's syndrome, a nervous system disorder that causes people to make repetitive involuntary movements or sound. No one has tracked these cases nationally, but pediatric movement disorder centers across the US are reporting an influx of teen girls with similar tics. Donald Gilbert, a neurologist at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center who specializes in pediatric movement disorders and Tourette syndrome, has seen about 10 new teens with tics a month since March 2020. Before the pandemic, his clinic had seen at most once a month. So if you take those numbers and you do the basic math right, they're seeing 10 times the amount of people for these Tourette's-esque tics than they would have normally before the COVID pandemic happened. And in common, a lot of them have primarily the fact that they've been watching, TikTok Tourette syndrome people, these people, I guess, who I show their tics or talk about having the issue and things like that, right? So it's kind of a confusing situation because it weirdly paints it out as if maybe TikTok's to blame, right? Obviously, if the thing that all of these random people have in common is that they're watching these types of TikTok videos, that's going to be the main culprit. So obviously what confuses me is how their brains are, I guess, interpreting these tics that they're seeing on these TikToks and, kind of processing it as an issue for their brain. And kind of, getting them to do that, right? I feel like I'm saying a lot. I need to chill out on that. But in general, right, that's what these people all have in common. So doctors, I guess, are looking at how TikTok is causing this issue potentially, or is somehow maybe activating the problem that was dormant in these people. I don't know. If you didn't know, I just figured this out as well. When it comes down to Tourette syndrome/tics, most of the time guys are much more affected than females, which makes this even more of a weird story. Because it's not really primarily guys that are coming in for this issue, right? It's primarily these teenage girls who are watching TikToks. Specialists at other major institutions have also reported similar surges. Since March 2020, Texas Children's Hospital has reported seeing approximately 60 teens with such tics, whereas doctors there saw 1 or 2 cases a year before the pandemic. At the Johns Hopkins University Tourette's Center, 10 to 20% of pediatric patients have described acute onset tic-like behaviors, up from 2 to 3% a year before the pandemic, according to Joseph McGuire, an associate professor in the university's Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences. Between March and June this year, Rush University Medical Center in Chicago said it saw 20 patients with these tics, up from 10 the full year before. obviously, March and June, that's like a 3-4 month period, depending on where you're, starting and ending everything there. So, we'll say a quarter slash a third of the year, there's already double what there was in a full year before that. Obviously, that's pretty extreme, right? That's a massive jump. And once again, all these people are saying that they've been watching these Tourette's TikToks, as I guess we'll just call them here. Doctors say most of the teens have previously diagnosed anxiety or depression that was brought on or exacerbated by the pandemic. Physical symptoms of psychological stress often manifest in ways that patients have seen before in others, Dr. Gilbert said. In the past, he said that he has patients who have experienced non-epileptic seizures and who in most cases had witnessed the seizures of relatives with epilepsy. There are plenty of tic-like behaviors to witness on TikTok. When doctors in the UK began studying the phenomena in January, videos containing the hashtag Tourette's had about 1.25 billion views according to their report, a number that has since grown to 4.8 billion. Quote, "The safety and well-being of our community is our priority, and we're consulting with industry experts to better understand this specific experience," a TikTok spokeswoman said. Some doctors aren't quick to blame TikTok and say that while the number of patients they're seeing is much higher than before, it isn't an epidemic. Quote, "There are some kids who watch social media and develop tics and some who don't have any access to social media and develop tics," said Dr. McGuire. Quote, "I think that there are a lot of contributing factors, including anxiety, depression, and stress." So at this point, it seems like you have doctors who are looking at TikTok as maybe the issue, that are seeing that as like kind of, I guess, the constant in this whole thing, and they're focusing, I guess, on how that could have potentially affected these kids. But then, you got these other doctors that are saying things like, oh, a lot of them already had anxiety or stress or things like that, and, they're acting out the situations that they've seen other people in. So, if these guys see anything happening on TikTok, there's a pretty good potential that they maybe replicate it, I guess, as a way to cope with their own stress and anxieties. Which, either way, that's a pretty fascinating issue, I guess, if you really think about it, because for instance, most people, when they're stressed out, I don't really think that they would do something like this. It wouldn't replicate the things that they've seen in the past, right? If you've seen somebody fall over and have a seizure, a lot of people aren't going to just do that the minute that they get stressed. But, these people have a condition potentially that could make that happen. And that's pretty wild to think about, because obviously this is an insane trend. They're in some areas seeing 10 times the amount of people coming in for this issue, right? They're in some places even just seeing it double or whatnot, but it's still a massive increase regardless. It seems unnatural compared to pretty much the rest of the data, I would assume. But at the end of the day, man, it's just a weird phenomenon. I didn't even think that this was something that was possible. But Kayla Johnson, a 17-year-old high school senior from Sugar Land, Texas, began developing tics last November after having been diagnosed with an inherited disorder that affects connective tissues. The severity and frequency of her tics worsened after she began taking medicine for the disorder, she said, and she developed new ones. One day, severe back spasms prompted her parents to take her to the emergency room. A doctor there suggested she might have a functional neurological disorder. When Kayla was released from the hospital, she said the ER doctor suggested she see a therapist and a psychiatrist. Kayla, who years earlier had been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, began seeing a therapist every week and at one point attended 5 weeks of intensive therapy. She was prescribed medication to treat both the anxiety and the tics, but they persisted. She was eventually referred to a movement disorder specialist at Texas Children's Hospital. When she saw him last month, he asked about her social media use. She said that during remote school last fall, she had a hard time staying organized and turned to YouTube to find videos of other students with ADHD to see how they were coping. That led her to TikTok compilation videos featuring teens with ADHD or anxiety who also had tics. In one of the videos, she recalled a woman who was baking had such bad tics that she threw eggs against a wall. In another, a girl appeared unable to control her arm movements and hit the people around her. Kayla's mother, Brandy Johnson, said the neurologist told her that doctors were investigating the connection between patients' tics and social media. These kids are trying to find support for anxiety and other things, and they're going to TikTok and other social media to find help, and it's coming back to bite them in a terrible, terrible way. I do think my tics may have been triggered by these videos, and it spiraled into its own beast, Kayla said. So it seems like kind of a split opinion. I feel like a lot of people are going to, of course, blame TikTok for this, right? But, as a company, what can TikTok really do? Obviously, it's kind of messed up to say that people with Tourette's can't upload on the platform to avoid these things. So, what do you do? Obviously, I would say if, as a parent of somebody who had a potential anxiety or depression disorder, something like that, right? I would kind of want to monitor my child's social media activity, I guess is the best way to put it, because I just feel like social media in a lot of ways drains people, right? And after the last year and a half at this point, with this whole pandemic thing going on and worsening a lot of people's lives, that just isn't an added need, right? And especially when you're a teenager, right? Social media can be really tough to deal with because, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of changes as a person. There's so much stuff going on online that you either agree with or disagree with or might be completely new to you. And there's a lot of stress factors, man. And I just don't think that children should be spending all of their time on social media, right? I don't even think kids really should be watching, 7 hours of YouTube a day. I don't think that that's good for your kid in any way whatsoever. But, they were using these types of content in some instances to kind of cope with the problems that they have, or like try to find ways to manage it and deal with it. And now for some of them, it's completely worse, right? Because now, on top of the fact that you're depressed or you have anxiety or whatever, now everyone is going to know that you have tics, right? You're going to act out or have spasms and things like that, right? That's got to be hard to deal with. I mean, I would never want to have to deal with that. That's got to be mortifying, and constantly having to explain it. It would just not be awesome, man, to say the least. So it's a pretty insane phenomena going on, though. I mean, to kind of see so many different opinions on this, right? I don't know full send whether or not that you can blame TikTok, but at a certain point, right, they shouldn't be watching these types of videos. Their parents should probably intervene. But it's definitely interesting to think about. So with that being said, though, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel. Follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shop Opti down below. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, well, I guess, watching TikTok and signing out.